Hello everyone, this is Tom Fox and welcome to episode 65 of the FCPA Compliance and Ethics Report. This episode begins a four-part series where we take a look at issues of bribery and corruption in the World Cup and FIFA, and we also take a look at the games themselves. So with my friend Mike Brown, the Managing Director at Infotel, we're going to take a look at corruption and officiating. Then Mike's going to take a look at the U.S. team, and I'm going to analyze the group of death. I hope you like this episode and our series. Thank you very much. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the FCPA Compliance and Ethics Report. It is my distinct pleasure to have my new good friend, Mike Brown, with me, and we're going to do something a little bit different. Over the next 4 weeks, we're going to honor the World Cup and talk about that in the context of compliance and ethics. And we're going to use some of the ongoing issues that FIFA, Brazil, the World Cup, some of its advertisers may have, certainly Qatar may have in the area of bribery and corruption. And we're also going to explore some soccer. I found out Mike played soccer in college, so we're going to lean on him for some technical information, and I'm going to try to bring a fan's perspective to it. So we hope to have a lot of fun with this. We're certainly going to have a lot of fun with it. And with that, Mike, welcome. I'm really thrilled to have you on board. As I understand, you're the Managing Director at Infotel. And could you tell the folks a little bit about your background and what brought you to Infotel?
Yes, thank you. Thanks, Tom. I really appreciate actually doing this and signing up to actually have some fun with you. What Infotel Worldwide does is corporate strategic investigations focusing on the due diligence of entities and businesses and executives. And what brought me to Infotel is that for about 30 years, I'd say maybe 28 of those years, we've been really focused on mergers and acquisitions and security. And so that really sort of necessitated sort of a low-key branding approach. As Candace Tall, the CEO, has discovered, is that these skills and capabilities were really very and sort of the changing world. And so she's actually brought me on board to help get the company to the next level, be a little bit more aggressive in our branding and our capabilities. And so that's what I did. I've started in March, so I'm new to the industry. Been doing basically general management, big corporations such as HP and Compaq in the past. So this has been fun. I've been drinking from a fire hose, as they say, about these different technologies and capabilities and what's actually going on. So it's been very fascinating. So thank you for having me here. Appreciate that.
We met, I guess, a few weeks ago now at the annual 2014 Compliance Week conference, and I wanted to go for a first-time attendee. What were some of your thoughts and observations of the conference?
Well, I thought the conference was really quite good. What was sort of fascinating for me was very high level series of personnels. I love the candid conversations. Many of the networking conversations were really quite excellent. I thought the compliance experts shared quite freely. This is a sort of I wouldn't call it a new industry, but it seems to be pretty sharing, pretty outwardly focused, and really looking for solutions and capabilities to do the right thing and actually help their corporations succeed. So, I mean, that was fun to see. That was very fun to see, Tom.
It's very interesting, your observation about the amount of sharing that goes on in the industry. One of certainly my observations early on was there are no trade secrets in compliance.
Yes.
That certainly you wouldn't tell someone outside your company, or at least I hope you wouldn't, about an ongoing investigation, but you would certainly be willing to share about best practices, even if they related to specific problems that you may be encountering or you may have encountered in the past.
Agreed.
So, and one of the things that is also very interesting about this industry is that It's not just the lawyers. It's not just the compliance professionals. It is persons like yourselves who are vendors and provide services or
Right.
products who are all part of the solution. And
Right.
so I always find it interesting to meet someone like yourself who's come from a different industry into compliance. But because you've come from a different industry, I find in many ways it adds to the strengths of what you can bring and your company can bring, because you have such a fresh set of eyes and a different perspective. And you might be able to suggest ways that we certainly haven't thought of. So I'm certainly going to welcome your input over the next, I don't know how many years it will be, but it will be interesting to see where you develop, where the company develops, and how the industry itself will develop.
Well, I appreciate that. The discovery that I've been doing is that we'll be talking this Friday at the SCCE conference, and I'm actually bringing out the kind of the new concept of a matrix of due diligence. And so as we announce that, bring that out and talk about that more widely, I'll actually bring that to you and show you and see what you think about it, because I think it is from an outsider's point of view. After listening to many of the presentations and hours of conversation with Candace about what's going on in the industry, we really are quite good at what we do in due diligence, and so this is a way of communicating it and making it fit. The one small fun part about for me was I was for 32 years on the other side of the compliance. I was that business guy that was trying to make product happen and working with these third-party vendors to bring it in and actually make it occur. So I was the guy that the compliance people were protecting. And so I probably didn't realize it at the time, and I had my conflicts with them, but I actually understand that now in a much stronger way. And so hopefully I'll be able to bring my point of view towards the compliance people, allow them to help pick my brain on maybe communicate what really compliance is about and how they can actually make my old job succeed better. So hopefully that'll be part of the fun things.
Well, good. Well, as I indicated in the introduction to this episode, we're going to record a podcast every week, at least for the next 4 weeks. We may even do 5 if we need to wrap up things. But we're going to talk about some of the issues around the World Cup, FIFA, and related matters, and then talk about some soccer. So this week we've decided to start with one of the things I think really ties into what Infratel does, and that's the deep dive level due diligence.
Right.
And how I wanted to really introduce this was there was a couple of pretty troubling articles in the most recent, last weekend's New York Times about bribery and corruption of soccer referees, or what we might call officials,
Right.
in the run-up to the 2010 World Cup. And I was surprised to find how really pedestrian officiating is taken, or at least was taken at this high level,
Right.
because it was left up to the home country or host country's soccer foundation or soccer organization to appoint the officials, and then in 2010 that was South Africa.
Right.
And somehow a company that was actually run by a gambling syndicate was able to get the contract to supply referees. And one of the clear things pointed out in the New York Times article was that if there had been any due diligence done on the company, it would have shown the not only direct owners but the beneficial owners as well. And I was wondering if, and it would have shown it was owned by these members of these gambling syndicates, and clear red flags would have gone up.
Right.
I was wondering from your perspective, what are some of the key things, or what are some of the important things that a company, if they're looking at an acquisition target, if they're looking at a potential merger candidate, what are some of the things that a company needs to come to Infratel for, that Infratel can provide them that perhaps their in-house law department can't provide?
Yeah, good question. Let's just focus on sort of the infrastructure of what was actually going on in 2010, and because I think we could actually talk about due diligence as both as an investigative sort of tool that discovers these connections and disclosures and and actually, things that aren't being disclosed, but it actually helps frame a planning network of what could possibly go wrong. So there should be two sides of at least this coin called due diligence, which is sort of preventative work and then actually planning work. So from an infrastructure perspective, you start looking about how things are actually connected together. FIFA allowed South Africa to do the work. They then hired this firm. Supposedly there were 680 of these sort of games that had potential bribery, and then the betting was the huge part where the money was actually being made in this industry. So if you start looking at just the basic business infrastructure, you start looking about, if you want to know the business, you have to know the owners. And so just simple, deep due diligence on the ownership of the structure that was being awarded the business would have brought up the red flags, okay? From a planning perspective, you start to say is, well, look, here are these referees. They're part-time. They are working other jobs. They don't make very much money, and there's $1 billion at least on the line for these betting. So there's these huge pools of money. So from a planning perspective, you start to look about, how are these referees selected? Okay, not only selected to be in the group, but actually selected to do the game. Okay. So you start to say is what are those things that can you put into place that would help mitigate the potential bribery that occurs. So one of the complexities that actually happens is that sometimes these refs are announced days ahead of time, weeks ahead of time, that they're actually part of the group, and then secondly they're going to be doing a game. This allows corrupt people plenty of time to then influence, if you will, the outcome. So from a planning perspective, if you use due diligence, find out about the company that owns it. You can actually do due diligence on the referees themselves, who may be leaning towards or needing to potentially take money, may have a bad financial situation or something like that. It doesn't have to be anything too bad, but the point is that then if you think there's the possibility that there's a bribe occurring, rotating the refs officials and actually selecting the officials, say for example, an hour before the game, right? You may actually bring in a series of officials and select the official who's going to be running the game, and that would help from the planning perspective to mitigate the kinds of things that can actually go. And that's the simple part of due diligence, is both the preventative side and the planning side. So, and that's what we bring to the table, whether you're doing a mergers and acquisition or you're doing a third party, hire, or you're worrying about someone who might be talking about things that they shouldn't be. So.
Well, thanks. And I think you told us before we actually started that one of the reforms FIFA has made this year is they've taken control directly of appointing the referees for each games and taken that out of the National Soccer Federation. So hopefully that's one change that will help going forward, at least in these games.
Well, what's funny is that they're working more on the professional side of the soccer refereeing equation, in the sense that they actually do fitness tests of the referees, and they've selected it. It was a 4-year process. They went through a training. They've done over 16 hours of training on this, because sometimes these refs are selected. They don't. The speed of play in World Cup is so fast compared to potentially the games that they may be calling and refereeing, that they were worried that they would miss things and be faked out, and the professionalism of refs. So they've been working really hard to do a better job of being fit and actually calling a good game. What is undiscoverable by me was whether they've actually done a good job of understanding that they financially done a due diligence. these guys are potentially an electrical engineer, for example, who does this on a part-time basis. And does his family need, or does his family's family need some sort of economic incentive that we just don't know yet, right? So that's the parts that I don't think FIFA actually has done. And the writings on the wall is that they've actually announced these 25 refs out of a selection process of 52 who are going to call the games back in about 5 months ago. So that gives 5 months of effort from nefariously bad people to potentially influence outcomes. So we'll see what actually happens going forward. So we'll see. It
will be interesting.
Yes.
Now let's turn to our first football preview.
Okay.
So I've asked you if you could talk about the U.S. team and maybe break that down a little bit. And I'm going to talk about the group that I think we're in. So as a former college player, tell us what you think of this year's team.
Well, I actually love this year's team. I love what he's doing with the squad. He's there's a lot of kinds of statistics of the average age is 27. They're new to the World Cup. There's only 5 World Cup experienced players, which means that from 2010 to this year that there's 18 new players on the U.S. squad that has never played in the World Cup. So that's going to be fascinating. There's actually more MLS players as a percentage and numbers this year than ever before. So that means the U.S. soccer as a group is actually getting stronger and better. There's the whole controversy of Landon Donovan. I actually support his choice to not bring Landon Donovan forward. There's maybe a lot of politics associated with that, but as a coach, you kind of know who is playing well and who's committed to really working hard and doing what they need to do. So we don't know what's actually happening behind the scenes in the workouts, but I really like the squad. I really like the squad that came out for the Nigerian game that was over the weekend. Very strong right up the middle. They really solidified it from the defensive side of the equation with Matt Beasler coming into the middle, Michael Bradley in the middle themselves. So they have a really strong middle section, and I think if the middle section can hold well and defend well, then they have enough cleverness and enough capabilities to do a good job. Now, what happened was that you could hear the TV host on this Nigeria game talk about Altidore actually scoring 2 goals, but I really think the guy that was the one that set up Altidore to do well was Clint Dempsey. He was very clever early on. He showed some very clever moves that I think forced the defenders from Nigeria to say, this guy is going to make me look bad. And so therefore, I think they actually shaded to him quite often and allowed for Fabian to get up there and do a give and go. And Altidore got his first goal in 6 months, or the striker actually got a goal in forever for the U.S. team. So the U.S. team's got some really good players. The average age of 27. So I look forward to seeing what they can do coming out of hopefully coming out of the group. So we'll see.
Well, I have a couple of questions for you.
Okay.
The first one is on the formation.
Okay.
As you recall, it's a 4-4-2-1 formation, which I absolutely hate.
Okay.
But I guess my question is, just because a formation is designated, does that speak into the reality of what happens on the field? And when I say the one, that implies to me that there's one striker, or at least one main striker, and that's Altidore, which leads to my next question is, he had not scored a goal in 6 months. The commentary was about what was going on in his head. I was not worried about what's going on in his head. I'm more worried about his leg and his foot. And when you don't score for 6 months, I think there's a reason. So let me pitch those questions to you.
Well, I think formation, that formation they're talking to show me about really is they really are playing closer to a 4-4-3 versus a 4-4-2-1, and the 2-1 is it can be really incredibly powerful if the three up top are completely interchangeable. But they're not. I mean, between Jose and Clint Dempsey and that crew, they're nowhere close to being interchangeable at this point in time. So I think you're going to see closer to probably a 4-4-3 if you're looking, but from a formation perspective. The critical part for me though is that the two in the middle for the defense, the two in the middle for the midfield, and probably the one or so in the middle up top. When that gets solid, everything works. Now, what was killing me about Altidore is that his first touch in the last 6 months has been terrible. I think personally, especially for a striker,
Right.
That he's got to have a foot, body capabilities that allows him that first touch that's just sublime and allows him to understand exactly where he's going. On his goal that he scored, he had an incredibly first good touch with his chest. He then brought it around and then smacked it in the corner. That was as good a goal that I've seen as any kind of striker recently. So maybe he's rounding into form. Don't know. Maybe he is. I think Michael. It depends on how Michael Bradley does. I think the team will do well if he does well. So as far as form and shape, there's not. This world of soccer is very complex. They're really looking for how can I get 2-on-1s, how can I get 3-on-1s, in every part of the field, and they just move things around from bit to bit. So we'll see what happens.
Well, do we have enough speed to do that?
We have. There's two kinds of speeds that we got to talk about here. One is physical speed, and the U.S. team easily has the physical speed. They actually physically are very gifted and very fast. The question is do they have speed of play? Do they think fast? Do they think fast enough to beat the kind of teams that they're going up against? Now, this is Ghana, this is Portugal, and this is Germany. So, the German team that we played a while ago, which we beat, it doesn't have anywhere near the same kind of players. So you can't really draw too much conclusions from that. Clearly, from the coaching perspective, they think the first game is critical. If they can get a win out of Ghana, then possibly a tie and a loss might get them through. But Ghana against South Korea 4-0. They look really good. Super ball control. What I did notice is that the U.S. team is organized to counter strike really quickly, really fast. So if they have any lapse in or any breakdown in their ball control, then we have a chance to actually respond quickly. So we'll see. I mean, it's built to frustrate the ball control teams, and so we'll see what happens on the first game. So, how about you? What do you think?
Well, you brought up the topic I wanted to transition into, which is Group G, the group
Right.
America's in,
Right.
nicknamed affectionately the Group of Death.
Right.
Because we start with Ghana, then play Portugal, and then Germany. We end up with Germany. And in thinking about this at some length, I think it's actually set up that the U.S. can make it through into the next round. I think that Klinsmann is as focused on Ghana, and he has designed a team to beat Ghana because of them knocking the U.S. out the last two World Cups.
Right.
And I think Klinsmann recognizes if he doesn't beat Ghana or his team doesn't beat Ghana, he won't be with us in August of
Right.
this year. So I think he's designed the team and the game to beat Ghana, and I think this is going to be the U.S. years to beat Ghana.
That would be nice.
That brings us up to Portugal, the number 3 team in the world. Portugal has one of the great strikers of all time, Cristiano Ronaldo. Fortunately for us, he is a bit injured right now.
Right.
And Portugal opens with Germany, which will probably in their mind be their key game.
Right.
And so my hope is going to be that Mr. Ronaldo really expends himself.
Ah.
And if his knee doesn't come out 100%, I think that the U.S. May be able to either tie or even beat Portugal.
Yeah.
Really sneaking up on them, because I think Portugal is going to be spent after Germany. I think that's going to be one of the best matches in the early rounds.
Wow. Okay.
So that brings us to Germany.
Right.
Third game in our group. I don't think the Germans are going to be as motivated, even with Klinsmann on the bench,
Right.
to beat America, particularly if they're 2-0 and
Right.
they want to perhaps rest and or play some of their younger players to give them some serious World Cup experience. So I think it may be possible that we can tie or lose closely to the
Right.
Germans. So
Right.
that's my path that I've blazed for the U.S. to get through to the quarterfinals. I don't know if it's going to happen. I do agree that it will be entertaining. The great thing about being in a group of death is you see some very good teams.
You do.
And Germany's number 2 in the world. Portugal's number 3. It doesn't get much better than that. So,
Who do you see as number one? You think Brazil's number one this year? Or do you think Spain, or where's the break?
well, if it was the 2010 Spain, I would say Spain. I'm
Yeah.
not sure those guys. I haven't seen them play as a team. They're all 4 years older. I don't know if they have the speed. They certainly have the creativity they had.
Right.
But with 4 more years of wearing on those legs, I don't know if they'll be able to execute those beautiful one-touch passes I saw
Right.
in the last final, where they
Right.
just destroyed the Netherlands. But it's either Spain or Brazil. And then the other thing I hadn't appreciated was Brazil, as the host country, didn't have to go through qualifying.
Right.
So I missed seeing them playing any qualifying matches, and I think they came up here for a friendly or something, but I just don't really count those. We were playing each team's second team we're playing, so
Right.
anyway.
Well, the funny part about it,
Thursday.
do you have a favorite on the U.S. team that you're hoping that does well?
Well, because I'm from Houston, Brad Davis is our representative on the team. Although I don't think he's going to start. He wasn't on the starting team against Nigeria, so I think that's probably who Klinsmann's going to have. I love Clint Dempsey because he played in the English Premier League.
Right.
Hopefully he does well. Plus, I love his passion and verve, and
Right.
the way he just lays it all out. And whatever happens, you know he's giving 110%.
I actually like Clint. I was kind of surprised that the TV commentators didn't pick up on Clint actually creating the kind of flair on the Nigerian game that kind of got them thinking that these guys weren't just simple pushover physical, animals. Because Clint actually put some moves on a few players that really kind of embarrassed them, I think. Yeah, I think that actually shoved them back a little bit in their mindset. So we'll see what happens. I know you can't do that against Ghana, and you can't do that really against Portugal and in Germany, but this is going to be one heck of a World Cup this year. So I just hope, just to kind of tie it back into it, I just really hope that FIFA has done a better job of protecting the referees, making sure that they are effective. They've done a good due diligence on their backgrounds. They find out that they're good people and things like that. So, because it doesn't take much. I mean, one award of a penalty kick, can be the whole game. So.
Mike, we're at the end of our time for our first episode on the World Cup. I forgot to ask if someone wanted to visit with you or follow up on anything you talked about. How would they get in touch with you?
It's easiest to email me at dmbrown@infortal.com. That's INFORTAL.com. So dmbrown@infortal.com. And so please send me a note.
Well, Mike, thanks a lot, and we'll look forward to catching up with you next week.
Should be interesting. Take care.
All right,
Appreciate that.
thank you.